Hey, welcome to the For Evansville podcast, a podcast about learning the needs and dreams of our city so that we can not just live in Evansville, but be for Evansville, and so that we can work together to make our city a place where everyone can flourish. My name is Jonathan Betcher. I'm here with Sarah Inman.
Hello.
And today we're really excited to talk to Joann Hunter.
Hi.
Joann is part of a network called And How Are the Children? And she's going to tell us a little bit more about that here in a second. But she was also a speaker at an event that we did in January called Imagine Evansville. And she talked a little bit about the work that And How Are the Children does there, but we'd love to hear a little bit more about that today. And in that talk specifically, she talked about how, yes, we need funding in education. Yes, we need funding in nonprofits and programs like that. But what kids really need is somebody to be part of their lives.
Yes.
Somebody's got to spend time with kids and be part of their life and invest in them in a personal way. And that's something that programs and donations and things like that can't replace that sense of personal connection. And so I know there are probably a lot of personal connections that have played a role in your life and story, as I think we would all be able to say. And so I'm excited to hear some of those stories from you today. But maybe to get started, could you just tell us a little bit more about And How Are the Children and your involvement there, maybe how you got connected to that, what you guys are looking to do in Evansville, what's the problem that you guys are seeking to solve?
Okay. So, And How Are the Children? Evansville started with some research that was done concerning the preschool to prison pipeline. And what that is basically there is a path that happens, but it's also, it can be forced in a kind of way if people feel that you are not on the path that they deem the right path. Like, so if you aren't of a certain race, if you aren't of a certain religious background, if you don't have the economic status, if you are not necessarily typically developing, if you are not developing mentally and emotionally in a certain way, you may be outed. You may be, pushed on this path of failure and different systematic things will push you into the path of prison or maybe even death for some people. So you start off in preschool, it's all good, you're happy, you're playing with toys, and then you end up incarcerated because of a number of different factors that are not just unfortunate, they are systematically built into different systems. And one of those systems is the education system.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't get a hold to you, or you don't have people intervening in different stages and areas of your life, or the support that you need, you may or may not end up incarcerated. And How Are the Children kind of organically formed from having these conversations that this is what happens to specifically Black boys. Mm-hmm. Many of them succeed, but there is a very large population that is behind bars, and they started off very young and they were fine then.
Right.
But life didn't line up, and they have people and systems, generations of people and systems that are working against them. It's not just that they don't want to work hard. It's not that because they're not smart. It's not any of those things. These systems have been set up and designed to not help them succeed. And so, And How Are the Children comes from don't quote me, but the Maasai tribe, and I believe it's Kenya and South Africa. And basically, when you go into their tribe, they ask you, and how are the children? Like after we get done with all the grown people and stuff, and how are the children?
Yeah.
Because if the children are well, then the town is well, the village is well, then everyone is well. That means that everybody is on their A game and they're doing what they are supposed to do. And so we want to know, and how are the children, Evansville? And what we found was the children are not well. Mm-hmm. So as it pertains to Black children in Evansville, the children are not well. Are there many who are doing well and they have these systems and things like that? Yes, but we have to look at what's really happening behind the scenes. And what we don't want to look at and what we don't want to see is that the children aren't well.
Right.
And we're not saying, let me clear this up, we're not saying that everything's all good with everybody else too and that we shouldn't help them. Right. But this is our specific work. We have many different organizations, but this one is specifically to address this problem.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's great. And I think that picture that you're talking about can be really hard to see. And whenever a listener might hear you describe that, it can be a lot to take in and be like, man, I don't know how to think about that idea that even this idea of a preschool to prison pipeline, the idea that, okay, so you're saying there's kind of this pathway that kids get sort of pushed along or put on by default, that even from a very young age, all of these different factors accumulate into where they're eventually going to end up. And I think for me, as I've talked to you guys and become more familiar with this concept, I recognize that growing up in like a pretty comfortable middle class white home, my understanding of the world was often if you make good choices and you do the right thing, then you'll have a good life, right? And if you make poor choices, then you're going to have a bad life, And so that was kind of the lens through which I saw the world. So whenever I saw somebody who was experiencing poverty or was incarcerated because of different crimes that maybe they had been a part of, it was sort of oversimplified through that lens of like, well, they made a bad choice or they made a good choice, And so, but as I've listened to you guys and learn more about the work that you're doing, I began to recognize the difference between the life that I had and the life that a lot of kids in Evansville have today. And a big part of that difference is the options that were available to me are not the options that are available to everybody in our city. So whenever it comes to making a good choice or a bad choice, I had a lot of good options available to me. And as I've heard you kind of talk about this preschool to prison pipeline, it's almost like for certain children in our community, if they don't fit into a particular pathway to success, it's kind of like, well, we'll just kind of pass them along, and somebody further down the road will be able to give them an opportunity that fits for them, but that opportunity never comes along. And so I'd love to hear from you, like, what do you see as like, what are some of the key ways that pipeline is interrupted? Okay. And specifically whenever it comes to what you shared at Imagine Evansville of, at a certain point, somebody's got to personally invest in a child. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? And maybe if there are examples that you can share from your own personal experience that come to mind of ways that maybe people invested in you, or when you look back on your life, do you see, opportunities where your life could have gone a different way, but because somebody invested in you, it created opportunities for success?
Okay.
That's a huge loaded question, but
nothing simple there. Just
no pressure. No, I don't feel any pressure at all because I share my story all the time, and that's the part of me that gives back. That's what I do, is I share my story, and that's what connects me with people is my story.
Sure.
And because it's so many facets to that story, I'm able to connect with people on so many different levels that I may not have, have ever met. So for the beginning, it would be like your first mentor, the first people to invest into your life. For some people, it's not, but for me, it was my parents, my biological parents. And if my mom didn't make it to the hospital, I would have been born in the church. That's an exaggeration. It's a hyperbole, but that's all I know. So we had that foundation. Growing up in Chicago, we had a very large church family. Compared to some of the smaller churches that I've been involved in, this church would be considered a mega church. So,
sure.
But it had that family feel. The bishop was actually a grandfather to me, and I thought his name was Bishop. I didn't know anything about titles, positions or anything like that. I just thought we were, this big family.
Yeah. So
I had my parents. They weren't perfect, but they instilled in me a good work ethic. They kept me around positive people in the church. They sent me to a school that had a strong foundation. So one of my stories is, a lot of powerful black people in my life. But one of the things that I remember the most, about my grammar school that I grew up in, is we had amazing principal, and he was dark skinned, and he had a mustache, and he had real low cut hair. Well, there's this guy on this picture outside of the door, and it's a image, right? It's not a photograph. But in my mind, this guy is my principal. Okay. Well, that guy was Martin Luther King. And I thought that our principal, like I said, I thought Bishop was my bishop's name. And I thought this guy was Martin Luther King. So, I just have this image of these strong black men in my life, and my strong black mother in my life, and these wonderful teachers. And in Chicago, a lot of our schools go from pre-K all the way to 8th. So you have that continuity of care. So I have a strong church family. I have a strong family. I have a strong, school with successful black people in it. This is building a foundation. None of these people, by the way, are perfect. Sure. But together, they form this foundation for me. So when life hits me, and all of a sudden I realize that, everybody's not happy. Everybody's family. Because to be honest, I didn't grow up as some of these kids are in Evansville. I grew up kind of middle class. I didn't grow up in
and you
extreme,
had a good support system.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in that. It wasn't until things happened, and my dad, my biological father, actually, he passed a few years ago, but I know he would want me to share this.
Sure.
He was actually a functioning heroin addict. We didn't know anything. Wow. So he was sending us to church with our mom. And instilling us these things. But behind the scenes, he was dealing with pain.
Yeah.
Pain from his past. Pain from where he grew up in Chicago. It was really rough. Not those options.
Right.
Those options weren't there for him. Was he smart? Yes. My dad was crazy smart. He was a tailor by trade. Very couture. Fashion designer. He was going to actually move to Paris to be with his fiance, and she lives in London right before he passed. The level. So the smart was there.
Right.
But just to survive involved gang activity, just to live, just to eat.
Right.
Like, not that his mom wasn't making a way for them and doing the best she could, but when you choose paths that you think you may face things outside of your home,
right,
that cause you to feel like this isn't enough, this isn't going to necessarily protect me when I'm out in the streets.
Right.
And so he chose paths that he felt was right. And then when he realized, oh, there are better ways, so he had people to come into his life, different teachers and things to come into his life.
Yeah.
Okay. And so my mom, she actually grew up in the same projects. So they both grew up in the projects in Chicago. They've torn a lot of them down. I don't even know if they even still exist. But
Sure.
she ended up moving with someone else. So if it were not for the people in the church kind of keeping her, and my
Right.
dad's family, my grandmother, would that be paternal grandmother, like introducing her to church and things like that, different people intervening in their lives.
Right.
So by the time it got down to me and my sisters, my dad, we owned our building that we lived in. It was a 2-flat. We lived on top and we rented out the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, he was designing clothes, but he also had a regular job. But when his sister passed away, that brought a lot of things back up. So people deal with death and things, trauma in different ways. And so he went back to drugs.
Sure.
And so you can only be functioning for a while.
Right.
Like, eventually it comes out there. My mom still held it down, 2 jobs, taking care of us. He even was still around. Even after that, he was still around, like,
Yeah.
because he, like, the fighter in him, like, still. So your parents, my point is, your parents don't have to be perfect. They just have to have people to help them. They just have
Right.
to have that village. So for me, we had that village still. Things went kind of way left, and we ended up in foster care. Mm-hmm. That was not the best experience at all, but it taught me humility, because I was used to eating my mom out of house and home. Like, you know, we didn't always get the best treatment, but it humbled me. And it put me where I am right now, because I was kind of privileged from my parents,
Right.
you know, suffering. And so those things got allowed to happen to me.
Yeah.
Did he do those things to me? No. But did he allow them? Yes. Because our suffering teaches us empathy.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we want to escape, and that's what my dad was doing. He was trying to escape with the drugs. And so that taught me, okay, Joann, no matter how bad it gets, don't escape with that.
Right.
So I ended up turning towards God. Okay, so that was the biggest intervention
Sure.
for me. So at first it was people. It was God all along, but I didn't know God for myself. And so when God came into my life, then he showed me how he was intervening through those people. Mm-hmm. And not only did he show me how he was intervening through those people, that he wanted me to be one of those people.
Right. He's
And so-
intervening on behalf of others as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that totally changed my life. And I began to see people as God's hands and feet.
Sure. How old were you when you started to just kind of have this shift of like
I
I'm
remember
curious.
exactly how it was.
Yeah,
I was
but-
15.
Okay. Wow.
I was 15. I actually went to my first foster home, like actual foster home. At first I lived with family, but I went to my first foster home, and I felt all alone.
Yeah.
And it put me in a position of all alone. I had known my parents my whole life. Like, I was that kid who, like, if you wasn't home by a certain time,
Right.
I was singing songs. I was making up stuff. Like, I was like, was there a plane crash? Did it land on your job? Like, where are you?
Right.
You know, because that's how, you know, close of a family we had. So for me to end up in that place all alone with people I didn't know, strangers, like, all I could think of was that very boring church channel that my grandma always watched that I did not want to watch because I want to watch Nickelodeon instead. And
Yeah.
I was like, I need something. So even though I grew up in the church, I didn't know God. So
Sure.
I started to, God began to reveal himself to me and show me, you know, what life really is. So even at the younger age of 15, because I had that foundation, whether I was paying attention or not, whether that's what I wanted or anything. I actually did want that life, but I didn't know how to get there because I thought I had to be perfect. See, that's some of the things too. Like for kids who grew up in the church, you feel forced.
Yeah.
You can feel forced. And so I had other people to come into my life, and these are my godparents who actually brought me to this area.
Okay.
They show me what the love of Jesus was.
Sure.
And that it's not rules, and that it's not people forcing people to do things. And so they intervened in my life. And so even though I wasn't able to be with them because they were trying to get me, they were trying to be the hands and feet of Jesus, they were trying to get me and my siblings out of foster care, but they had to go through, it's so much, it's a lot to try to intervene in somebody's life for, in a particular way.
Right.
There's systems.
Right.
There are systems that are set up, and so they did a lot. And then going from Illinois to Indiana was a whole ordeal. Mm-hmm. So we ended up in foster care for 3 years. But during that time, God was showing me who He was, so that I could be who I am now. So that was the last major intervention. But in between those years, I had teachers. Moving to different homes, I had teachers.
Yeah.
I had the family members of those foster parents that I was living with to impact my life. Counselors, people that I would meet at the grocery store. Because God enlightened me, I started to see everything and everyone as, his hands and feet, his tools. I started seeing, a dog that liked me, to brighten up my day, even though I may have not, got treated right that day. That relationship really opens up your eyes to when you're in a bad situation, when you're in traumatic situations, that God is still there.
Yeah. So even as a teenager, when you were in these different circumstances, you were able to recognize the way that different people in your life were coming along and supporting you and helping you. And it sounds like that maybe is what led to you wanting to play a similar role in the lives of other people. Yeah. Is that right?
Yes.
So what does that look like then for you? How do you, as you think about okay, I recognize the way different people showed up for me in my life, and now I want to do that for other people. How do you go about that? Because I think a lot of people might relate to that and say man, I want to be that person who's there for somebody whenever they're going through a really tough time, but I don't really know where to start or what's the right way to do that. So whenever you're thinking about that and you're trying to play that role in somebody else's life and to really be there for them and be part of their life in a meaningful way, how do you go about that? What do you know? What's that look like? I guess
it starts at the beginning of my day, right? And I say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, thy will be done. What is your will for my life? That's where it starts for me. What is your will for my life? What do you want me to do today? What's on your agenda? Okay. And then it's translated to modern term, how can I help? Right? How can I help? How may I help you? How may I help you? So you doesn't mean me. It means how do I step outside of myself and help someone else? And so I have a job, I have children, I have a husband. So it starts with them. Well, how can I help my family? Well, I'm going to work today. They need to get dressed. They need to I got to drive along. How can I help my family? Okay, when I get to work, how can I help the patrons that are coming in to the EVPL? How can I help them? Is it a smile? Is some parent working with, they're trying to apply for a job and they got kids running crazy, so I'll come out from behind my desk, right? Because we sit at these desks and we sit behind these closed doors and these walls, How can I help you, right? I get up from my desk. I get off of Facebook from posting about, our programs and for Evansville. I get up and I go and I say, oh my goodness, what are you doing? Do you want to draw a picture? Like, these are simple things.
Yeah.
Love thy neighbor as thyself. That was the first scripture my mom taught me. Mm-hmm. I found out later she was just trying to test out a new tape recorder. I was like, Mom, you taught me this awesome, scripture that I live by every day. And she was like, girl, I just got a new tape recorder and I couldn't think of nothing else to tell you. I'm glad you thought of that scripture though, because it has guided my whole life.
Yeah.
Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and all thy mind and all thy strength. And love thy neighbor as thyself.
Sure.
So it starts with that, right? So whatever I feel I can do, I have held the door open for people, able-bodied people, right?
Sure.
They can get the door for themselves, but I hold the door open. And then on a deeper level, I've had, young ladies to come in and they don't know how to sign up for social services. See, here's the deal. I was in those positions. I was in foster care, so I dealt with social services. At one point in time in my life, I was a single mother. I have had to be on food stamps and on Medicaid and these different things. I've had to go to the parenting rewards at the Christian Life Center. I've had to, I've been there. And like I said, we try to avoid our suffering, but our sufferings teach us empathy.
Right.
And so those things, I will help them get online. I have millennials who only touch their phone. So they don't know how to use a computer.
Yeah.
So I say, well, let me help you with that. I have older people who won't even look at a computer.
Yeah.
Right? But they need to get their check stubs.
Right.
I help them, in the most simplest ways. And then there are other people that I will go in their inbox on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll reach out to them and I say, are you okay? And when they give me a real answer, I respond.
Yeah.
I respond accordingly, and I take them in and I pray for them and I say, do you need anything? And I mean it.
Right.
Right? Because our thing is, we say, how you doing? When y'all ask me how I was doing this morning, and I said, great, I meant that. That came from an authentic place.
Right.
If I wasn't feeling good, guess what? I have learned to say, I'm not okay. Why? Because that's when someone can step in and help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good.
Those are the things that I do. This is my life every day. How do you get in there? How do you get in there? You do something to help someone else, whatever it may be. It may be holding the door open. It may be putting up an umbrella for somebody, or you can do the deeper things and get to know somebody.
Right.
And you stick around.
Yeah.
You stick around for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you just do what you can and you be authentic.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think you said at Imagine Evansville, and then even as you're saying now. So there's a lot of opportunities maybe to have empathy on someone you just see on a day-to-day basis, but people you start interacting with, because I think people might ask, okay, how can I get involved? What can I do to kind of be a part of interrupting and disrupting some of these things? And I think you've said it a lot of different ways, but if you can even maybe share a story or a way that someone can maybe, I think you said at Imagine Evansville, be a mentor, get to know somebody. So get connected to someone, not just one time, but something that happens over time. Do you have any like stories you can share of that?
Okay. So, so many. Because I just put myself out there like that. So that's number one. You have to make the decision that this is something I want to do.
Sure. And that means committing time to
it too.
Yeah.
You have to make the commitment within yourself. And I don't just go out finding people either. So that's why God is very much a part of my life, because I feel like he leads me to people, because not everybody is in your life for forever.
Sure.
So,
sure.
Some people are there for a season.
Yeah. And you're paying attention throughout your day. It sounds like, from the start of your day, you're kind of looking for opportunities to serve other people. And so when those opportunities come up, you've kind of already made up your mind.
Yes.
I'm going to make time. I might come out from behind my desk and change up, what I was doing or what I had planned for the day in order to invest in somebody else.
Yes.
And sometimes it sounds like you're saying sometimes that leads to opportunities to
Right.
invest deeper and form more of a relationship.
So I pay attention to where this is going. Is this someone that I'm going to be seeing on a regular basis? And so it kind of develops organically because I don't push things.
Sure.
I try not to push myself on people because that can make them, draw back. I just try to honestly just be there for people when they need me.
Yeah.
Whenever they need me, and I keep myself open, and it kind of just grows into that. But the biggest thing is in your mental, making sure you're not closing yourself off, because a lot of people have dealt with rejection and pain and trauma, so they don't want to make the choice to be vulnerable.
Sure.
So it's really not in the. I heard somebody say, Whitney, she's a life coach, like trainer, like a beast. I can't think of her last name. She'll get me, but she said you have to. How'd she say it? You have to basically, like, it's in the mental work. Like, you want to know the strategies. Like, y'all want me to give, like, maybe not y'all, but people may want me to give, like, a step-by-step.
Right.
But it's not that.
Right.
It's like,
it's more about
however
like
it
a
happens,
mindset.
it's more like a mindset of being open to it. And when you open your mind to it, then it will come and things will develop. And you got to constantly, even when you get hurt, even when you, because that's the thing. Like, people are fine with mentoring until they get hurt.
Yeah.
Until it costs them something.
Yeah.
Until it's inconvenient.
Right.
So it's really about what's going on in your heart.
Yeah.
Are you going to forgive? Are you going to let it roll off your back? Are you going to say, okay, well, they didn't text me back.
Yeah.
We get like that, right? Because I get like that, and I'm assuming that everybody else get like that too.
Of course.
Maybe. Like, oh my God, I just sent out this heartfelt text, and this person didn't text me back. And you're like, all flustered or whatever. Like, man, then I'm going to cut them off, right? No. Joann, you asking Joann how she builds relationship. I don't cut anybody off. And that is crazy in cancel culture. And cancel me. It's fine because I don't cancel anybody.
Yeah. That's good.
I don't cancel people. Why? Because people can change. And even when people don't change, you can change. You don't have to let people abuse you, but you can set up boundaries. And when you consistent, that makes changes.
Yeah.
Consistency is what makes changes. So I am consistent. No matter what I've gone through, I've endured my own share of trauma.
Sure.
But I have chosen, with the help of the Lord, to forgive and then use it. I don't use trauma as I see people doing it, using it as an excuse to be bitter. I use my trauma to propel me to help more people. Oh, this trauma happened to me, this thing happened to me. Okay. It's just informing me that there are people going through this that I did not recognize because I wasn't dealing with it.
Yeah.
Like, it don't hurt you till it hits you, right?
Right.
It doesn't affect you until it is you.
Right.
And then what you do with it, you turn it into the love that you need to support others. So everything that I'm doing, these are all like symptoms. What you see me doing, those things are a result of the direct suffering and pain that I've experienced.
Right. Yeah. That's really good. I think oftentimes a big barrier for people when they hear the word mentor is, oh, well, I'm not really qualified to be a mentor because I'm not smart enough or wise enough or, gosh, I don't know how to talk to a teenager. Like, sometimes that's intimidating, And so I like that you're identifying that oftentimes the ways that you've been able to show up in people's lives has not been driven by what your strengths are, but actually the things that you've struggled with in the past, and being able to relate to somebody, to have empathy for them, and to step into their situation because you've experienced similar types of pain and hardship. So I think that can be really encouraging to listeners, that there's not necessarily a particular model or steps that you need to follow, and that you don't have to have expertise necessarily in a particular area, that it's more about being willing to show up in somebody's life, and specifically maybe in the life of a young person. And so I guess as we kind of near more the end of our conversation, I'd love to ask you, like, how do you see those types of interventions playing a role in that preschool to prison pipeline that we talked about? Like, how does that make a difference in the life of a young person or a student who at the time is maybe just kind of being passed along, right? It's like, well, this person's circumstances are a little too complicated or a little too difficult, or it doesn't really fit with what we have to offer, so we're going to pass them along, right? And we're gonna hope that somebody else is able to help them or able to invest in them. How does this type of I'm just gonna be willing to invest in this person's life and be present and just care about them and show up however I can, how does that make a difference in that student's life? What does that look like? And do you have any like stories that come to mind where you've seen that happen?
Okay, so when you said show up, that really, like, that's our thing with Encounter the Children. On our website, we're getting it together. We're getting it together. But on our website, I asked our leader, Dr. Joy Howard, she's with USI. I said, what do you want to go on this website to invite people to join us? And she just said, tell them to show up.
Yeah.
Like, just show up. And I was like, yes, that, because that's what I do. I just show up. And who knows how to talk to teenagers? Nobody.
Teenagers don't even know how to talk to teenagers.
So that's not the thing. When I interact with students and children, I am going not to tell them anything. I'm not even going to intervene. I'm going to be nosy. What are y'all talking about?
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to see, you know, where they are. I'm going to be where they are, see where they are. You know, I don't hover all over them or whatever, but
Sure.
I mean, sometimes just observe and then see in what ways would they want you to help. So they're trying to get on Roblox. I can help with that. Right?
That's a game for those of you who don't.
To be honest, the
is.
language of everyone is just kindness.
Yeah.
We have a Marshallese community. I don't speak Marshallese. My husband does a little bit, but I don't know nothing. But they come in and they're asking, you know, I say, okay, we're going to figure it out. I'm going to figure this out. We're going to get you what you need.
Yeah.
You know, like, kindness is the language that reaches everybody. How does that interrupt? Well, we know that relationship building is what, that connection is what interrupts everything. Love interrupts everything. So if somebody knows that you care about them, then they'll be more willing to make the choices.
Right.
If everybody's doing it, right? They'll be more willing to make the choices that say, someone cares about me. I have to do the best that I can.
Yeah.
Well, what if the lawyer who is sitting next to a young black man who did not do the crime, or maybe he did, but this lawyer loves this person as a person,
right.
He's going to fight. If the prosecutor, right, your state appointed person, actually genuinely loves people and says and wake up and says, you know, what can I do to help my client today?
Yeah.
Then that means someone may get, you know, not put in jail. Right? So you know, or a lesser sentence than what they would because of their racial makeup or from where they came from. You know, that's how you interrupt it. If everybody along the way is doing things and genuinely caring about people other than themselves, or just as much as they do themselves, then you have that, you know, that interruption there, that disruption, right? You know, if a teacher, you know, cares about what they are teaching, if they are doing whatever they can, and many teachers are, and it's making a difference, but we all on every level need to do it.
Yeah.
If we all do it, then that village, that's our thing at How Are the Children. It takes a village to raise a child. Just one, you know, but if we all work together, it takes off the load. Yeah. So it's going to interrupt because kids are going to feel like you care.
Yeah.
They're being heard. Yeah.
I think we tend to underestimate the significance of that, especially in the lives of a young person. Yeah. The impact of feeling like somebody's in my corner, somebody cares about my success, somebody is listening to me, and they might not have all the answers, but they're there and they're asking me about my day and they're listening to me. And that can sound, I think, to some people like, well, that's just kind of like a mushy-gushy answer that isn't really like solving the problem.
I got a story.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I had a grandmother. She's taking care of her grandson, and they've been coming in and doing tutoring, okay, with the tutor. She came up to me and she said, now I don't actually interact with this boy because currently right now I am trying to develop programs for elementary school students. I haven't done that yet. So he's just working with a tutor right now. So I don't get a whole lot of interaction with him.
And he's in elementary school?
Yes.
Okay.
But he's actually being homeschooled. And so they come there to do the tutoring, but he has to like abide by the Indiana standards and stuff.
Right.
Okay. So I helped them yesterday to print off the standards that they needed. That was important to them because her printer wasn't working at home. Sure. And so she leans over to show me. She said, he said, the brown lady at the library, I just like her so much. She is so nice and kind to me. And she said, well, what's her name? Like trying to get him not to say the brown lady, you know. And he said, Miss Joann. And she said, you are making an impression on him. Yeah. This is a white family. This is not a black family. This is a white family. Right. But the brown lady is making an impression on him.
Well, it sounds a lot like the impressions that you had of people in your community when you were younger, of like the bishop or the principal that you still remember to this day. Yeah. And you probably didn't interact with the principal a ton because he wasn't your teacher or anything like that.
I was mad, so I didn't have to go to the principal's office too often. Yeah.
So, but yeah, those things made an impression and they made a difference.
It did. So. And on the flip side, I've seen as how mentorship works, right? I love to show children the fun in books, but I want to teach children actually how to read. I was just telling her that. I want to teach children how to read. And the tutor, she seems amazing. And like, I'm learning about mentorship myself and how much we need it. Sure. Like, I don't have the time to like take off and take classes and get the expertise. I have 6 children, biological children of my own and a husband. I don't have the time to do it. Like maybe there are like these ultra super moms out there, but I'm not her. Like I can only just do what I do right now.
Well, parenting 6 kids is
you know, and I have a village too, a very large village, and I'm grateful for them. Yeah. But I wanted to know something, right? So it's not just about being a mentor. It's about being willing to be the mentee. Sure. Right? So I said, can I talk to you for a second? She said, sure. I said, I admire you so much. You got to start off with a compliment, right? Like you got to butter them all up. But it was from my heart. So I was like, I so admire you. But I want to learn how to teach children how to read too. Yeah. Like I want them to love books, but I want you to be able to read it yourself. Right. So I want to give them that dual thing. Yeah. You know, there's so many people that are illiterate.
Right.
And our children, they're being passed through. Like, they may have behavioral issues, and they keep passing them through, or passing them along, or sending them to alternative schools. But no one was there to take the time. Teachers want to do it, but they don't have the time.
Yeah, they've got 30 students sometimes in a class.
You know, so if we out here, maybe me at the library, when it's a little downtime at the library, if I could teach a child like to actually read and say, hey, there's a graphic novel over there and it has words too.
Yeah.
You know, then I could do that. So she was like, I would love to show, like, just that, me being willing. Like I said, it's not a strategy.
Right.
I didn't plan that today. I didn't say at 2:00 I'm going to ask the tutor. You know, I didn't do none of that.
Right.
I just went authentically from my heart and told her with passion what I wanted.
Yeah.
And guess what? She could have said, heck no. Like, I don't like you. Like, she could have said anything. But that energy that I had, that I was excited about who she was, because she's a tutor, right?
Right.
I don't care about what she's not good at, blah, blah, blah. None of that. I spoke exactly to her passion, and she was willing to share.
Yeah.
You know, she was willing to share. And today, right before I came here, I said, I got a podcast I got to go to, but I want you to tell me a few little tidbits. And what she gave me was so powerful. I have a degree in early childhood education, and they did not even tell me
Yeah.
what she told me.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. They probably did. But I was going to night school as a single mother. I missed it, you know.
Right.
I had very incredible professors, which actually leads me to another story. My professors loved me so much at Ivy Tech, Miss Linda and Miss Susan. They loved me so much that actually, to get me through my courses, at one time they paid
Wow.
for a babysitter so that I could do my work.
Yeah.
You have so many amazing stories of people just showing up and stepping into, like, just caring for you, and you're using that to still share that with other people. But even saying to a tutor, hey, teach me what you do, you're showing her how much she's valued. Like, she walks away feeling valued. Like, the simplest of things is just caring for people, right? You're just showing up and asking them the things that I know you're passionate about, or just listening to their story enough to step into it, to say that I'm here with you. You're not standing alone.
Right. Listen to the stories. Listen. I love that you said that. Listen to the stories. I love a good story. And then so when I met Jonathan, I was like, he loves stories too.
He does.
We're going to be best friends. Like, this is
Right.
amazing. Just listen to the stories. And that will help you, because you may not have the right answers. I've had people pass away this past weekend. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I just say, if you need me, I'm here.
Yeah.
If you want to tell me anything, I'll listen.
Yeah.
That's all. People just want to be heard, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
love, we could equate that to listening.
That's good.
It's great.
Yeah. Well, that's a good first step, I think, for listeners who are listening to our conversation. I think, I love what you said about just having a mindset of waking up in the morning and saying, who can I care for? Who can I love today? And listening is a great first step for that. You don't have to have the answers. You don't even have to know what to say, but just to step into a space and to take the time to say, how's your day going? And dig a little deeper, and maybe
Give a compliment. Those work.
Yeah. We got compliments.
Seriously.
Yeah, that's a great conversation starter. A compliment and then a question, and then being willing to take the time to invest a little more time if there seems to be an opportunity.
Yeah, just be open to it.
Yeah.
It may seem scary, but do it afraid.
Yeah.
Do it afraid and see what you get. And if you get knocked down, okay, there are more people.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, not everybody likes Miss Joann. That hurts my heart to say that. Not everybody likes Miss Joann, but eventually they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I still like her anyway.
Well, Joann, thanks for being with us today. And
Thank you.
if you're listening to this podcast, check out And How Are the Children. They have a website. They have a Facebook page. Lots of great things that they're doing. And
Or you can come see me at the library, East Library in Bayer Park, Evansville, Vandenberg Public Library.
There you go.
And you can listen to part of their conversation on our YouTube channel.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, check out the Imagine Evansville talk entitled Pursuing Justice to hear more about that. But thanks for listening, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Well, that was really great. Joann is one of those people that the few times that I've had an opportunity to sit and talk with her, I'm always really inspired and encouraged. And I felt that way today as we were talking with her. She's got a lot of great stories to share, but also just her perspective of how she approaches relationships in the world is really refreshing to me.
It is. And we said this to her, and I think two things I'm going to take away for me personally. One is I love how she talked about responding honestly when people ask how you are. And she said, not just because like we need to be more honest, which is we should. She's like, but it allows people to help. It allows people to allow to like enter into whatever's going on. And you actually get a different perspective when you start seeing how someone really is. Maybe they're great, and that's awesome, or maybe they're not great. And how can I help? Is really a question that she asked. And she's just very like super compassionate in general. But then being able to share her stories that she's had, she's very gifted in just being able to like you feel like you're there with her when you're hearing those stories. Yeah.
Well, and I think when you are honest in your response to that question, or you share maybe things that you've struggled with in the past or difficulty that you've faced in your life, I think it also kind of gives the other person permission to be vulnerable and open about those things too.
That's true.
Sometimes maybe we hesitate to do that because we feel like we're burdening the other person.
Oh yeah.
But the reality is like most people are dealing with things as well and have not everything's perfect in their life either. So to hear that from somebody else is maybe a little bit comforting, and also kind of gives you permission to be like, yeah, my day's kind of crummy today too. So that's cool. But as we think about how this conversation fits into some of the broader topics that For Evansville is focusing on this year, specifically with school partnerships and bringing kind of the whole community around schools as they try to create opportunities for students to learn and grow. How do you think that Joann's like way of thinking about things and this idea of entering into people's circumstances and just caring about them, how does that fit into that broader picture in your mind?
I think it gives, at least for me, it makes it feel even more accessible and simple to be a part of. Because even when I asked her, what are some things that people can do? And she's like, people always want like a list of things to do. There's not really a list. You just talk to people.
Yeah.
And I think even at Imagine Evansville, we asked the question at these smaller groups at tables, what's a school that's closest to your house or to your business? And if we start thinking that way and then think, man, how can I maybe enter into a conversation with, maybe it starts with just teachers that your child's teacher.
Right.
But being able to just show up and ask some of those simple questions of how are you, right? And hopefully you can eventually get to an honest response and see how you can help. But just sharing and being a part of what's going on in people's lives, it can be really that simple.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And sometimes the barrier to doing that is feeling like I'm not really making that big of a difference in this huge systemic problem.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever you think about like the preschool to prison pipeline, that's an intimidating challenge to try to take on as a community. And it's complicated, and not everybody agrees on different aspects of it and stuff like that. And so it can feel like, well, just being nice to somebody feels like kind of a cop-out answer.
Feels like not enough.
And it is true that there are, like bigger conversations that need to be had and bigger changes that need to be made. But even along with those bigger changes, the difference that you can make just by investing in one person it really is a lot bigger than I think a lot of people realize. And so one of my takeaways from this conversation is just to try to live in a way that if everybody lived that way, our city would be a place where everybody can flourish. So I might not be able to make all the difference in the world as just me.
Yeah.
But if I live in a way so that if everybody lived that way, it would make a big difference, then that's I think a really good place to start. And it might lead to some involvement in those bigger conversations as well. So
we can only focus on one thing at a time, right? Control what we can control, and hopefully if we start with ourselves, it continues to build out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jonathan, I feel like I have to ask though, how are you doing?
Today, I really am doing well.
Oh, good.
Especially after this conversation. It was really enjoyable. So
Yeah,
thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm great. This is fun. So I really enjoy this too.
Glad to hear that. Well, listener, we hope that you're doing well as well. If you're not, we hope you have the opportunity to talk to somebody about that and share that with them. Maybe ask somebody you see today, and after they say they're fine, maybe ask them again and see if that's the real answer. But beyond that, maybe think about who are the people in your life that you might have an opportunity to invest some time in. Are there young people in your life who don't have a great support system around them? And what does it look like to ask them about that, and to ask them how they're doing, and to spend a little extra time listening to what's going on in their life? And so we hope that you'll do that. We'd love to hear about that as well. We'd love to hear about your experiences of maybe how people have invested in your life, or where you're finding opportunities to do that in somebody else's life. So drop us a line at info@4evansville.org, or on social media at 4evansville on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for listening.